Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the November 1st, 2017 meeting of the Danville County Planning and Zoning Commission. Thank you for your presence. Appreciate you being here, taking interest in the decisions of planning and zoning and sharing the decisions that affect our community. As tradition, we'll begin our meeting in prayer. If you bow with me, please. Our Father in heaven, we thank Thee for this day and all the blessings of it. The health You've given us allows us to be up and about again another day. We thank Thee for this community we live in. We thank Thee for this country we live in. We thank Thee for the safety and protection You've given us, the peace we enjoy, the freedoms we enjoy, and blessing us in those ways. We pray today for those in New York City who have lost loved ones, that You would console and comfort them, and for those who have been injured in that tragic event, that You would restore them to their health as soon as possible, that they may take up their normal walks of life. We pray for all of our servicemen and women who are continuing to serve our country at home and abroad, that You would be with, bless, and protect them, bring them home to their loved ones as soon as possible. Be with us this day as we make decisions that will affect this community. May these decisions be in the best interest of all those involved and for the betterment of our community. Continue to watch over and care for us, guide, guard, direct us in all things. Forgive us when we fail You, and last save us. In Christ's name we pray, amen. This morning I'd like to introduce Jim Boyd, who is our newest member of Planning and Zoning, and he is taking the position of Clyde Mullins, and Clyde had to resign due to employment issues. So Jim, I want to say officially welcome and glad to have you, and thank you for agreeing to serve on Planning and Zoning.
Thank you.
Item C, approval of minutes from the meeting of October 4th, 2017.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Susie moves we approve.
Second.
Jeff seconds. Question, discussion on the motion to approve. Hearing none, all in favor? Vote unanimous. Thank you. Item D, financial report 2017, September.
I'll make the motion we approve.
Terry moves we approve.
I'll second.
Vince seconds. That's by her. Question, discussion on the motion to approve the 2017 September financial report. Hearing none, all in favor? Vote unanimous. Item E, letters of credit. You want to mention that, Stephen?
Yes, sir. Again, you got just a placeholder on the agenda for letters of credit, and you have that master list behind in your packet that shows the cash bonds and the letters of credit we're holding. Just more of an update. I did meet with Mr. Jody Sharp last week on the Hunt Farms project. We talked a little bit about that the last meeting. It's been some discussion. We had a lengthy meeting about what his intentions are, and he's been meeting with his legal folks, and we've been talking, I guess, just in-house about what we want to do to try to get this resolved. A lot of little kind of hiccups with this project that will make this tricky. Mr. Sharp indicated to me that at this point the money's been called, and he thinks it's our responsibility to finish the project. I told him I disagree with that a tad bit, that when we call a bond, it's still the developer's responsibility to finish the project as they agreed. The Planning Commission has the option to finish the project with the money, but it's still the developer's responsibility. We also have the option to pursue action to get the developer to complete the commitment. He indicated to me at this point he's finished with it, we have the money, and we can finish it. Clearly, he indicated there's not enough money to finish it. He made that clear too, but that was our decision to figure that out. So where we're at with this is a process in talking with the county and talking with his legal folks is that someone needs to finish it, and clearly there's not enough money. And if we're going to finish, if the Planning Commission chose to finish, if you all directed the staff to finish this, and we know there's not enough money to finish the final surface and the sidewalks, in my opinion, I don't think we would want to go forward unless we had the neighbors' commitment that indemnified us if we only built a portion of what's left. For example, if we just put the surface down and did not build the sidewalks because we only have 51,000, I would want to make sure that the neighbors signed off on that they were okay with that amenity being built in that fashion, and that no one would come back on the planning commission and say, hey, we were supposed to have sidewalks and streets and everything else, but clearly there's not enough money, and Mr. Sharp does not feel it's his responsibility to finish it. So I just told him I disagreed with that. That's why we all got lawyers. And that I'd like to work something out with him together. But the other part of that that's an issue, and I want to bring this up, the reason he doesn't want to finish it, because the county has a standalone ordinance that they won't take the asset until 51% of the homes are built and occupied. So in his opinion, no one can put the surface down, or why would anyone finish the subdivision if the county's not going to take it? The subregs say we build a product to a standard, and when it's done, the government takes it after they do an inspection. County has an ordinance that says we can't take them to a certain point into the future, therefore we never get done until we're to that point in the future. That runs a little bit afoul of the subregs and the state law, but it is what it is. And Mr. Sharp's, hey, I'm done. Y'all took my money. Y'all do what you want to do with it, and I'm on to my other projects. Yes, sir.
So in other words, a developer can choose to not finish a project then, and take all the time in the world until they run out of money. You know, the money becomes less valuable. Let's just say that.
I disagree with that,
Me
and
too.
that's his opinion. I disagree with that. I think the subregs say something different. I say the
right.
state law says something different. I think when the developer turns in a plat and it shows public infrastructure, then he's telling us we're going to build a street, and then when we approve a set of plans, we've put a set of plans forward, and of course then we have process on how we do letters of credit and how we bond, and then we renew letters of credit, we reduce amounts, and then we call bonds. So at that point, that doesn't commit the planning commission to finish anything. It just meant we called the money after 4 renewals, and we're holding the developer's money. And the developer still, in my opinion, it's in his best interest to try to get it finished and get the government to accept it.
Yeah, well, because what I'm saying is if they haven't built 51% of the houses, that means that they'll never get a road.
Or if the subdivision never sells out market-wise,
Yeah.
3 people buy a house and it never gets done. Subregs don't really say that.
Yeah.
So it's something as we move in and talk later on about amending some documents, stuff that I think there's some housekeeping fixes that make more clarity here. But just to make sure where we're at today, we're holding that money in our checking account for those letters of credit we cashed on those 4 projects. And at some point in the future, the Planning Commission can give the staff direction to finish them, or we can try other techniques to pursue the developers to finish them. One of the projects on that list, the city is actually working on, and then when they're finished, we'll write the city a check for the amount, and that is the Fox. I don't have mine in front of me. Sorry. Foxgate. The city's working on that one right now. So the simple way that the city's chose to finish it, and then we'll write them a check. So just an update on that real fast. Again, we can talk about that later, but had a good meeting last week. And I think we came to an agreement that it'd be neat to sit down with the neighbors and talk together. Mr. Sharp suggested that he would be okay to that we'd sit down with the existing homeowners and ask them if they would be okay with, for example, removing the sidewalks from a development, which would put the money more in line with what's finished, and then whether we do it or he does it, we both agree it'd be best if the neighbors signed off on that. How we get there will be a little tricky, but that's what we got legal guys for.
Henry, you got any comment on that, where we are? Any thoughts or ideas? Or?
I have not had the chance to review this situation, but we've had an issue kind of like this in Nicholasville in the last couple of years, and the developer will be bound by kind of what's in the subregs for how bonds are applied, maybe even instead of what the bonds say. So I think we've got some leeway in this.
Okay, thank you, sir. Any other questions to Stephen on this? Anything else on that, Stephen, or are we ready to move on? Okay. Item F, subdivision approvals, Nancy Lackey, final plat amendment, Seminole Trail.
I'll start on these and then let the developers jump in here and the surveyors. Pretty straightforward on this one. Looks like there's 3 lots, and there actually are 3 lots. But all we're doing here is consolidating these lots on Seminole. There's actually 2 lots and a sliver. One of those slivers were already conveyed by deed to one of the parcels. And then Nancy is going to consolidate these 3 pieces that she owns into 1 lot that you see. And the reason's pretty straightforward. She's got an outbuilding she wants to put on the property. The location on one of the lots wasn't the most desirable. She wants to scoot it a little bit across the property to the rear. Those lot lines were an issue, so she's consolidating her 3 pieces of property so she can have an accessory building that meets our requirements and is where she desires for it to be. Technical review had no issues, staff had no issues, and Nancy's here if you guys want to ask any technical questions of her and the property owners in the back here.
Questions?
I'll make the motion we approve.
Terry moves we approve.
I'll second.
Vince seconds. Question, discussion on the motion to approve. Hearing none, all in favor? Vote unanimous. Number 2, Thomas Nolan, minor plat, located on 2168 and Highway 34 Waterworks Road.
This plat, again, technical review looked at it, was fine with everything, staff had no issues. What you see here is kind of a piece of a farm that's being replatted into 4 pieces, track A, B, C, and 5A. Might note that track C's frontage is a 50-foot strip that runs over and connects with Waterworks. Track 5A would also have frontage on Waterworks, and then the track A and B have frontage out there on 2168 and 34 junction. Again, you see all the acreages on the plat, 42 and change, 38, 50, and the 6. This totals 138 and some change. Ask Nancy if there's anything else. Again, we're just creating 4 large tracts of this farm. Meets all the requirements of the zoning ordinance, and again, technical review had no issues. Just trying to look at the frontage, and the frontage is a little tricky to see on that Waterworks corner there for tracks 5A and C, but you can see the strip, and I've highlighted mine, you can kind of see where the frontage touches that portion of the road.
We've got kind of, don't have a full map here.
Yeah, let me explain that too.
It's just chopped off.
Yeah, you're not seeing much on that other side there. What it is when we're making copies, we've got new copiers 11 by 17. Jerry's got the full copy there that we're going to sign. Nancy does not have an ability to make reduced copies for us, so some of the other surveyors and engineers are giving us 11 by 17s and full. We want to make sure you guys get them out in your packet, but we can pass the full one down the table so you guys can see it. But the busy part of the plat is over there where the road frontage is, and that section where it ties into the front. But you're not seeing a whole lot off that edge other than, and Jerry's got the boundary edge there. We can slide the big one across the table if you guys need to. I think there's another big one in there, Jenny.
The 50-foot, the
Yeah.
50-foot strip is the one that's sort of a flag-shaped lot, Steve.
Yep, that's right across here.
That's it right here. Yeah, okay.
I'm sorry. The 50-foot strip is right here.
Oh, okay. I was thinking, is that right there? Okay, I got you.
It goes right there. There's one. And we'll pass that down the table. There's the strip right there. Right, just- Nancy, you got anything you want to add? Surely you do.
I was told last week to keep my mouth shut.
I wasn't. No. Here's the strip right here. See, goes here.
I sent mine there.
Right here, and then this one touches it right here. They both touch it right in this section right here. Not much on the edge here, but
And this is just family.
Back here, I guess.
yes, sir.
Neil Eklund, Waterworks Road. I have a question. Do any of these 4 plots show access to any of the roads?
Yes, sir, they all have road frontage.
They all have road
Yes,
frontage.
sir. And they have access to the road.
To 2168 and Waterworks Road.
Yes, sir.
Just to jump off that question, so the plat shows the frontage. Now, there's not defined driveway access points or future driveway access points, but they are the legal frontage requirements required by the zoning ordinance and subregs. And so all 4 of those tracks meet our requirements for the frontage. But as far as defining a future access point, specifically where a driveway apron would be, that's not shown on the plat. But, and again, you can see all 4 frontages on the different roadways.
Is the 50-foot strip, Nancy, to keep that lot, that section from being landlocked? Is
Yes,
that-
sir.
Okay, thank you.
And Mr. Nolan also owned,
Yeah, please
Mr.
come to the
Nolan
mic.
also owns track 5.
Uh-huh.
And back many years ago, when the farm was originally surveyed, they only left 8 feet out on Waterworks Road, which doesn't meet standards. It did at that time, it doesn't now. So that's the reason for and the strip was there also, it just had 8 feet on Waterworks. So we've extended that strip to be 50 feet wide and technically 58 feet on Waterworks. It's in that curve, so there's an 8 feet strip and then there's a 50-foot strip.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions?
It's technically correct.
Yes, sir.
I'll make a motion for approval.
Jeff moves we approve. Bill seconds. Question, discussion on the motion to approve. Hearing none, all in favor? Vote's unanimous.
Thanks, folks.
Thank you. Item 3, John Janet All Miller, minor plat, Highway 150, Danville.
Alrighty. And again, let me get to that one. Can you guys, you can see an 11 by 17, there's large versions there. Jerry's got all the bigger ones to sign, but we want to make sure we mail these out to you guys ahead of time, so you at least get a look at them, and in the future, hopefully get you good looks on all of them. But this plat's pretty straightforward. This is coming off a portion of the farm that you see to the east. So if you're looking at this, they are consolidating, putting these two and creating a new lot. And you can see the dashed line through the center of the red lines. So the farm is, again, to the east, and they're pulling the portion of these two. The red line now shows what will be the new parcel, and it'll be 61.554 acres in the red configuration that you see. And again, you can see the name just to the east. There's still a remnant piece of the farm, and it's pretty straightforward. It's zoned AR1. Technical review looked at all the issues, meets all the requirements of the zoning ordinance. Staff had no issues. Dale's here if you guys got any questions. Dale, anything you want to add? Or?
So they're just combining these 2 tracks.
They're creating this track, and they're pulling them off the farm.
175 acres.
Yes, yeah, he'll get up and.
Is the dotted line dividing?
It shows how that tied into the original farm.
The black dash line in the sort of the center of the property, that's 2 different parcels. That was 2 different parcels. The parcel towards the road was in one track, which was 30 acres, and then we're pulling 30 acres off of the original 250-acre farm and adding with that to make a combined track, one track of 61 acres,
So this is all just one?
all one track.
So it's separate, so we've got a 175-acre tract and then this tract, correct? Or
Yes, you can look on the, I don't know exactly know what the remaining is. but you can look down at the bottom,
173.54.
The remaining acreage.
370.
I put my glasses on so I can see it. I'll tell you in a minute. Yes, 173.5 acres remaining on the original parent tract.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Nancy moves, excuse me, Nancy. Nancy's still on my mind, I guess. Susie moves we approve.
You never know.
I'll say it.
Terry seconds. Sorry about that, folks. Motion's been made to approve and second's been made. Question, discussion on the motion. Hearing none, all in favor? Vote unanimous. Thank you, Dale. Item 4, Bob and Janet Orms, minor plat, Highway 52, Lancaster Road.
It's an interesting plat, looks pretty straightforward, but again, what Dale's done on his plat in red is what basically we're dealing with here. This parcel is coming off the piece to the west. The owners are to the west, I'm sorry, and at one point was going to be sold to a different neighbor, and now the neighbor to the east, that's kind of off your drawing there, you see Roger O'Hare is purchasing this tract and going to put that with his piece of property. This one's interesting because, again, as you all know, we've as a planning commission have changed filing deadlines for plats. So this one actually came in right before technical review, I think at 4:30, the day before technical review. We looked at it, got it through technical review. It's before you guys today. There is actually a closing that's in the very near future. So this one was time sensitive for both owners to try to make this real estate transaction. And we explained to them this plat had to be created and go through the planning commission process and then ultimately be recorded and get a book and page number before they can get into a closing. So I think they were appreciative of the way we handled the plat in a real kind of late file fashion. And Dale did everything we need done, and technical review looked at it, everything was good. Staff had no issues, and Dale can explain a little more detail, but we are, again, moving this tract to the east to the O'Hare piece of property.
So again, it's technically correct, all the signatures and everything been provided. I make the motion for approval.
Jeff moves we approve. Bill seconds. Question, discussion on the motion to approve. Hearing none, all in favor? Vote unanimous.
Thanks.
Item G, public hearings, Bob Allen Collision Center.
Moving on to 2 site plan approvals. This one's on World Way, and again, Bob Allen Collision Center. What you see is a little building addition to the rear, 1,800 square foot is what's happening on this piece of property. There's already a building, parking, everything's already on site, and what Mr. Allen wants to do is just add an addition to this building for the collision center. You see an existing concrete line, existing asphalt line. That building addition's going on that concrete part. You can see it clearly depicted by the drawing here, and again, there's really nothing happening different except we're expanding the building. This threshold of expansion was probably right on the border, needing a come in and do a site plan amendment. We weren't sure if there was an original site plan approved on this, so Kendall, with the firm here, decided that they would turn this in. If we can't find a site plan on it, this would become the first site plan for the whole site, but everything you see is existing. The building addition's what's new. And if this is technically an addition, then you guys are looking at addition, but it barely met the threshold of requiring a site plan addition if there was a prior one on file. We couldn't find the actual original site plan. It could have been a PUD approval in years prior, but they decided to go ahead and bring it in as a site plan approval to get everything in compliance, and their goal is just to build an addition to the building. Kendall, I don't know if there's anything you want to add or any questions you guys might have.
The building is used by the Bob Allen Auto Mall group of, businesses and to just repair and do body work on wrecked vehicles, I guess. So there's a small office space in the building, and the rest of the space is more of a shop or a mechanic's garage where they work on cars. And there aren't a lot of I've been there to the site. There aren't a lot of cars parked on the site, so it's a pretty clean facility as far in terms of just not having junk wrecked cars laying around.
Is the addition more for office space or more?
No, it would be more a shop,
Okay.
mechanic space.
Is that where they put the paint booth? It looks like.
They may have a paint booth for that space, but it's all for painting cars, repairing cars.
Yeah, I mean, it looks like that would be the isolated part that would be
It
the
may
paint
be.
booth.
It may be. I'm not certain of that.
And is there any restrictions to the back of that property with the the residential people that are back there?
There was a plat that we noticed mentioned a buffer on the back of the
Okay.
property. And if you go to the site, you'll see that there's existing cedar trees that are
Yeah, I know where it
that
is.
very well buffer the back of the property.
Yeah, I just want to bring that up because it is buffered. And it, in
I
other
said
words,
cedar
it's not
trees,
making it unsightly, let's just
Pine
say.
trees. Yes.
And to just tie on that, letters went out to neighbors, no comments came back to us. If that is a paint booth or in some kind of internal paint,
Doesn't matter.
there's pretty strict regulations now how we do paint booths and how they're designed and built. I don't think there would be any kind of overspray or any kind of obnoxious activity if it's all contained inside. And again, you look at the depth of the building, it's still on that concrete, and there's asphalt that goes back that's even existing. Decent little bit of green space and some natural plantings or some
I just want to
historic
bring up
plantings.
that the OSHA and all of that has much stricter regulations, so if they are going to put a paint booth in there, it won't even affect anything because it can't.
Yeah.
They come in every month to every car dealership and check everything.
Yeah, there was no indication to us of actual use inside the new portion, other than there was an addition for us, but again, it was a collision center. I'm not sure how they're
Even
going to
if it is, I mean, if it is that type of a thing.
I move we approve.
Terry moves we approve.
Second.
Jeff seconds. Question, discussion on the motion to approve. Hearing none, all in favor? Vote unanimous. Thank you, Kendall. Item 2, Bucks, Rivard, and Siri, site plan on Ben Isle Ave.
All right, thank you. Again, what you're basically looking at here is 16 apartments, but they're a little bit unique features. They're two-story. They've got one-car garages attached to them. That isn't a street. That's a private driveway going into that development off Ben Ali. And you might note, if you're looking at your drawing, with north being to the top, the buildings on the top right, the 4 units, are a little bigger than the other buildings. They're 924 square foot units. The rest of them are 897 square foot units. So 4 of the buildings are a little bigger, just the way the property kind of flares. The other 12 are a little smaller units. All have one-car garage, so they all meet the parking requirement. 2 parking spaces, so one would be the garage parking, one would be the driveway apron that sits adjacent to the garages. Little patios out back. Technical review had a few little questions, a little bit about the curbing that you see on one side of the street, not the other. Mr. Wise explained all the design aspects of what they're doing there. We also gave you guys the landscape sheet that's in your packet too, so you got 2 exhibits he turned in. You see the dumpster screened. Everything meets our requirement. Staff had just some suggestions about some of the landscaping, but the landscaping's a nice touch, how they're doing some plantings between the units to define the backyards, and then individual plantings at the back of all those patio spaces. All the plant materials are listed on your landscape sheet. Everything meets our requirement from the zoning ordinance, setbacks, parking, landscaping. And again, this is not a public street. That is a private travel way into this project. And again, everything was in compliance as far as a technical review. Looking at it, staff had just a couple comments that were revised and addressed it during a technical review. Again, 16 apartments, 2-story, 1-car garages, and Kendall may want to address. Glad to answer any questions.
Is this directly behind the hotel? Just trying to get a feel for the location.
It is the vacant lot between the hotel and the last group of townhomes and things that were built. So it is right in line with what's there. It's not something out of, and I think it's an extended stay hotel as well, so. I don't know if that makes any difference to you, but it's not, most of the people are there for a week or two, or, for the summer.
Kendall, that touches Peril Road, the property itself.
It does. If we have any access, there won't be any access. There's a big utility easement for a transmission line there that almost creates it is a useless space for us. We can't put a building there, but.
Any other questions?
Make a motion for approval.
Jeff moves we approve.
I'll second.
Susie seconds. Question, discussion on the motion to approve. Hearing none, all in favor? Vote unanimous. Thank you, Kendall. Item H, new business, budget committee report. Anything, Terry?
No,
Thank you, sir. Oh,
we'll be meeting later. We'll be meeting after today's
okay.
session.
All right. Item 2, Personnel Committee report. Personnel met yesterday with Stephen and looked at a new employee handbook and employee benefits book, and they all have a copy of that. We made some minor changes in that, and Stephen has corrected those at these points. Stephen, you want to just
Yes,
share
sir.
a few highlights of that?
So what we're going to do, I hope into the future as a team here, is when we make personnel-related issues and the Personnel Committee, we've worked together, we come up with a personnel action item. So we walk into the Personnel Committee kind of with a game plan on what we're talking about. And you can see there's 5 action items that the Personnel Committee spent considerable time on. They met in September, and then we met in October. There's 5 items. The first one was we just revised our job descriptions more in a format style to be more closely related in what we do. Those are in your packet right behind those action items. And one is mine, no big deal there. We would be revising what would be Jenny's job position. Her title would change slightly to office manager. It's more reflective of what she does, and those bullets are very spot on what she does daily and what we intend for her to continue to do. That would be one of the items as we're revising the job descriptions. The second bullet item is, actually, 1 was the job descriptions, 2 is actually Jenny's position. So Jenny would assume that new role as office manager. That's number 2. Number 3 relates to basically hours, and we talked about who works when. As you guys know, we're all still working 4 days a week. Office is open 5 days a week through scheduling. Starting in January, what the Personnel Committee has said, my position and the office manager position would go full-time starting in January. I think there was some talk this might happen in October. Everything's been working great under the 4-day schedule. And the office is open 5 days a week. So January 1, Jenny and I would start this 5-day-a-week process. Action item 4 is just we set starting salaries for the future. As far as I know, none of us are going anywhere, but you never know. Some of us don't act right every now and then, you never know. But I'll try to do my job, but this is for the future. And so there's been some discussion on what the rate is, what I've been paid, but what we did is we set what we think are reasonable salaries for the positions that we have or might have, and this is again for the future. I think this was an interesting thing that the Personnel Committee did. It just lays out where we're going in the future with the positions. And I might note, one of the positions, going back to the job descriptions, is been revised to be part-time starting in January. That's really part of number 1. And then we're going to get to what our chairman just mentioned. We've created 2 things, an employee handbook in your packet and an employee benefits manual. The employee handbook, as you guys know, we have personnel policies. This is kind of the heavy lifting stuff, hiring, classifying employees, grievances, ADA issues, workplace violence, discipline, just employee policies in general that you guys are used to seeing and most employers have for their employees. This would become the employee handbook, and if this is approved, this would stay pretty static well into the future, and the Personnel Committee has looked at that, and as Jerry just mentioned, made some changes and it lays everything out. The benefits manual is a separate document that annually the Personnel Committee would look at, and the main reason they would look at is every year our healthcare stuff changes, our dental rates, vision, life, whatnot. This is for the employees to have really both of these documents, but this is really the stuff that they're most interested in, which is how they take their leaves, how we assign the leaves, how our holidays fall, and again, how our benefits as far as health, dental, life, and vision work. We have realigned our holidays with the city. We're out of line a little bit with the city's holidays, which I think in the past maybe caused an issue or two where maybe the Planning Commission staff wasn't in the building, but the city staff was. Now they're 100% in the line, and we're going to follow the city's kind of directive. For example, use Christmas. We have in this benefit manual Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, but if the city assigns that Friday, Monday, or Monday, Tuesday, we're just going to fall in line with how they do the holidays so that we're in the office the same day the public building's open. Not much more to say about these. So they're all listed as action items together. The chairman has suggested if the planning commissioners want to study this a while, we can bring it back next month and vote, or if you all are comfortable with it, it's something that could be voted on today. And what we're suggesting is that all 5 action items be approved. Personnel committees reviewed those and given them their approval. And we've studied them a little bit, and it's really up to the commission to decide if you guys want to consider these this month, next month. And there's not much changing as far as our benefits. Everything's pretty much staying the same. The Planning Commission provides single coverage for most of the benefit options. The dollar amounts are now listed in the benefits manual on what the Planning Commission contributes and what the employee contributes for all the plan options. And not much more, but I'd be glad to answer any questions. And again, it's something you guys can think about, or if you feel comfortable, we could take that up today and get to, but all the effective dates on these, as you guys can see, are January 1. All these items would go into effect first of the year. And I appreciate the Personnel Committee's work on this. Again, they've sat down not just an hour or two, it's been a few hours. And we've talked about a lot of different parts of this. And it was good discussion just the other day. So,
I like to say we appreciate your work on this as well.
well, I mean, you guys gave me a lot of guidance, a lot of guidance. And
Second that also.
thank you. I look at it all as housekeeping, really. Most of this is just kind of starts us off on the fresh foot, especially for these job descriptions and those issues. And again, I think one of the more pressing matters is we're anxious to get Jenny into her new position, but again, it would start on the 1st. And I'd like to have a little bit of time to sit down with the employees and walk through some of these issues. That's one advantage of this month versus next, is it gives me a month or so to talk with the employees about some of these things. Yes, sir.
I'd like to make a motion that we consider this now based on the input of our committee and your work with it, because there's no reason, I mean, we already have the input from our committee. We should probably vote on it today if we can, to help you out to get everything in position.
I'll only do whatever you guys want to do, and Jerry, you guys may want to jump in here. I'm fine with whatever y'all do.
Okay, Vince has made a motion to, we approve it today, is that correct, Vince?
Yes, but I didn't want you to have to do it because you all are in the committee, so.
That's fine, I
Yeah.
appreciate it. Do I hear a second?
I'll second it.
And Terry seconds. Now, discussion on the motion to approve. We can go ahead and approve that, or not approve that motion and approve it at the December meeting, whatever the pleasure of the commission is.
I have one question. Is it,
Yes.
it's amendable, right, as needed?
At any time, yes.
Yeah, because like, with the health insurance and everything, the way things are going in that
So,
area, I mean, we should, probably give consideration to what the majority of public interest groups are doing.
yep. So it's a good question, and here's what's good about these documents. The Personnel Committee's taken a very active role in this. As we see it, down the road, if we have to change something, either document, the Personnel Committee would do that. That's their role. The benefits manual is something I think we're going to look at every year. So when we get our new rates, we may shop some plans this year and look for some other options. There's been some discussion by the employees. They'd like to be able to buy a better plan, and right now the Planning Commission provides single coverage of a pretty good plan, but there's some employees that would like to maybe get to that next tier and the Planning Commission's contribution could possibly get an employee to an employee spouse or employee child option, but not on the plan we are today. So you're exactly right. We're going to shop some plans and bring those back to the committee, and down the road, the benefits manual I see will be readopted every year with whatever rates we're going forward for the employer and the employee of the 4 benefit options that we have.
And one other question, how large is the group
We're 3.
that is under this umbrella?
We're 3 employees.
Only 3? I mean,
Yes.
but I mean, there's only 3?
Just 3 of us.
Yeah, that's-
And so, and the Planning Commission, in my opinion, is very gracious in what they provide for the employees. Basically, on health care, it's almost it's $494 a month to pay for the single coverage. But there are employees that desire other coverage options, and that's coming out of their pocket. So if we can buy a cheaper plan or find a cheaper plan, that same money may help an employee get to that next tier. And that's what the Personnel Committee has directed, that the direction we want. We're going to shop plans this year and try to buy down the price or buy up the options. So I see that benefits manual coming to you every year and have a new date on it every January, and then we'd pass that out to the employees as those things change, the dental and health, basically. The handbook is pretty much the hard rules of the office. You guys know. We've got some new stuff in there about our vehicles and just some stuff, if you get in a wreck, that kind of thing. So I think it's a good document, and the Personnel Committee, again, we didn't talk much about the employee manual as much because we've been working on the benefit side, but that would stay static. If we have to amend that, that would come back to you guys every single time.
Mr. Chairman, if I might clarify.
Yes,
This
Henry,
motion
please.
is to approve all 5 of these personnel action items in one raft? Okay.
Yes, sir. Fine, yes. Correct, Vince?
Yes.
Thank you. Any other questions or discussion? If we are comfortable with approving this as presented today, then we'll vote for it. If not, we'd vote against it and then look it over and approve it at the December meeting. So that's what you need to consider before you vote. Any other discussion? All in favor of the motion to approve as presented? Vote unanimous. Thank you, Stephen, for good work. Jenny, everyone that worked on that, we appreciate it. Thank you, Henry, for clarifying that. Legal reports, what is that? Henry, you want to share that?
No legal report this month.
Thank you, sir. Zoning permits for September. We have that in our packet, I think. Yeah, questions, anything on the zoning permits for September? Item 5, zoning ordinance amendment.
5 and 6 I'll just do together, and this is just more a quick discussion item. There's nothing for you guys to consider, but working through the work plan, I think we're knocking off some items at a fairly quick clip, and we're down to talking about the zoning ordinance and subdivision regs. We just talked about the sub-regs earlier. I think that it's time for some housekeeping amendments. And so what I want to ask you guys today is how you guys would prefer, as the Planning Commission, to move forward with these documents. The zoning ordinance is in need of some housekeeping amendments. Our attorney has pointed out some things. We've been working on some stuff. I've been looking at the book. We use the book daily. There's a few things in the book that need to be addressed. Namely, number one, it needs to be codified. The book is a hybrid, the zoning ordinance, I'll use that one first. Adopted in 2003 in the county, 2 in the county, amended several times. Adopted in 4 in the city, amended several times. The amendments typically aren't codified in the book, so you have to go different places to find these amendments. You open a chapter of the book and look at the page and realize that's not what the zoning ordinance says. You have to go find something somewhere else, and it becomes a slight problem, especially for a new guy in town, because if you don't realize, you open the NCC section and read it, that's not the rules. You gotta go find it somewhere else, because we flipped NCC and NCRA in 2011. So Kendall was in the building here. At one point, they thought they had a different zoning district than they had because the rules changed underneath it. So the book is not codified. That's a big issue. Sign ordinance was passed in 2012. It's kind of in the book, it's kind of not in the book. And it's a problem when people go to the website, open the zoning ordinance, and think they're looking at something and they don't see what the hard law is. So one of the part of this project for the zone ordinance would be codifying all the prior amendments, reorganizing the book, and probably adding just a few housekeeping items in probably Articles 1, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So what I want to really throw out to you guys is how you would want to consider that document. Would you want me to bring you an article at a time, and we put it up on the screen, walk through it, and you guys pass them one at a time? Would you want to have a work session? Let's say we took Article 1, it's general stuff. Bring in Article 1, maybe go into a work session, walk through the thing, have an open discussion about what Article 1 says or what's being proposed, and then we put it on the docket for a later meeting. Another option is to have more of a public viewing, to draft these articles and go out with meet some groups, but I'm telling you, most of these are housekeeping in nature. These are things that are already passed, and we're going to take what's in Article 2 and move it to 8, and what's in 8 and move it to 3, and kind of just put things in their logical. For example, parking and landscaping really ought to be in where the zoning district. So when you open Article 5 and look at highway commercial, you shouldn't have to then go open Article 8 to figure out what the parking is or what the landscape is. It should probably all be in one place so you can look at highway commercial, and I can print out 8 pages and send it to a developer and say, here's what you need to know. That's kind of where we're going with the ordinance, so I'm not sure it's really going to change a whole lot. There's going to be a few housekeeping amendments, but it's mostly just going to be reshuffling things around. Then, as you guys know, after you amend the zoning ordinance, it has to go to all the governments to be ratified, and that takes time. There are a few timely amendments that we need to get in place that are needed soon for some different reasons, and so I'm just throwing it out there how you guys would want to move forward with amending the zoning ordinance and the subregs. And by the way, the subregs you guys approve. You know, you guys haven't looked at them in a long time. They're dated 1990, but the subdivision regs under the statute, the Planning Commission draft, adopt, and approve. They don't go to the governments to be ratified. That's your document that becomes law of the land for Boyle County on how we deal with subdivisions. The subdivision regulations are going to address some of these construction issues we just talked about. How we finish subdivisions, how we do bonds, bond estimates. There's a lot of housekeeping items that need to be done in the subregs, and I've already started looking at those articles too. So some of these are getting close to present to the commission, zoning and subregs, and we could bring Article 1, for example, next month, put it in your packet, have a discussion, pass Article 1, forward it to the city. But I think in talking with the city and the county, especially the city, they prefer to see everything at one kind of, with the zoning ordinance, kind of one amendment, so they can just pass it one time. If we send them article, they'd have to have standalone readings, publications, whatnot. So I want to start bringing you guys articles of both. We can make committees go that route. We can bring them in chapter by chapter and literally just hash them out right here in this forum in a work session. And then put them on the next month. Again, that's kind of where I'm going with it. And again, we just wanted to make this an open discussion, what you guys prefer and how you guys want to move forward with those.
Just have a forum, but
Can do it here.
personally, I think having a forum would be a good way to go.
Yeah. For example, I could bring you 1 and 2. They're pretty straightforward. We could come in here and just look through them. Everything would be underlined, strike through. You would see what's being proposed to change. We'd have notes on what came from what article. You know, this came from 8, now it's going in 2. For example, Article 2 is the definitions, and it's kind of odd. They really ought to be in the back of the book. And then we've got all these articles, and I guess it was just a different digital age. So we got all these articles in the book that say reserved. There's nothing in them. And I don't know if they're for future things, so we got, you know, numbers 1 through 15. Several chapters have no text. It'd be easy to codify all our zoning ordinance text into 7 or 8 articles. We need an article on code enforcement. We don't have that. That would be a 1-page article, probably in the back somewhere. It'll be more of that nature. 2's going to 8, 8's going to 4. Landscaping's staying the same. Maybe we tweak something small, or you guys know something. It's like, hey, why don't we fix that? But it's more going to be reshuffling the zoning ordinance and then fixing 1, 3, and 6. But again, we could bring it in next month and just this, no vote. We're just going to go through the article, because if you guys pass it and vote on it, then it's heading to the city under a time. You know, they've only got so many days to consider it. So we might want to hold and reserve the vote once we go through all the articles and then pass them. Yes, sir. Go
I
ahead.
think it'd be good to do it that way too, because some of the, educationally, for some of us that are newer on the, we would learn a lot more of the vernacular, and I think
Sure.
that'd be really great.
We'd be using a little different fonts, a little different look, modernizing the book a tad bit, maybe some graphics. The subregs is a different document. If you guys haven't pulled your subregs out in a while, they're not on any website, by the way. Developers that call me can't get to the subregs. They're only in hard print form, and they've been amended by resolution by this body from years prior. There's a whole book of resolutions that change the subregs over time. None of those things are codified in the subregs. None. And I have a whole binder of resolutions that said, change Article 6 to this certification signature now should say that. You don't find that when you open up the subdivision regs, and so some developers have conveyed to me it's very tricky to understand what the rules are. So that's going to be a great process to just codify that book with those resolutions. I don't see they're going to change. The board, and a lot of this is prior to a lot of you guys being on here, have passed very specific resolutions on how the subregs flow. We're just going to put that same language into the right article, so you can see it in one place and get it on our new website when it goes live. But the subregs lacks right now clear issues about some of these bonding issues. We just talked about these completion of subdivisions. We need to address some issues on how we finish subdivisions and what the Planning Commission's role would be or not be. And that's not in the document right now, so that'd be new stuff. So we could bring a couple articles of zoning ordinance, maybe one article of the subregs, and just domino effect. But again, the subregs, as you guys adopt the subregs, it becomes the law. So it'd be easier to pass one article at a time. But the zoning ordinance, then we have to send it to the three governments, and then they have to go through a process. And I don't know historically if we've done a zoning ordinance amendment and we send it off to the governments and one tweaks it slightly. I don't know if that's happened in the past, or, I don't know if you guys know, but I would anticipate we may look at Article 3 and say this is what we want, and the city might add a sentence and the county might reverse a sentence. I mean, that happens sometimes when you send it off. But I think the overall goal would be to have the same book when it's all said and done for all the jurisdictions, which technically we don't have either right now.
Hopefully with your presentation and encouragement, everyone would adopt
I don't know.
similar.
Well, it's their book. That's one interesting thing. The county, that's their ordinance. Perryville, that's their ordinance. Junction City's using an ordinance today that they administer. So it's their book. So it's very likely it can become 4 different books. But we'd like to have it one. It makes sense. But the county book right now is very different than the city book. We actually have to grab a county book separate than the city. For example, look in the AR1 and see what conditional uses are permitted. It's different in the city than in the county book. So we have to know what book to grab, depending on what jurisdiction we're in. The sign stuff, let me bring that up too. The sign ordinance was changed in 2012. Signs are very controversial, y'all know that. And I prefer not to go back into the sign ordinance issue. However, the city gave us clear guidance that there was a Supreme Court case that changes how sign ordinances are to look in a zoning ordinance. And that Supreme Court case has been sent to me by the city. I've seen it in the past. And what it really is suggesting is a wholesale different way you do sign regulations in your book. And if we were to deal with that Supreme Court case and fix the zoning ordinance to meet that test, we would actually have to revise the entire sign ordinance of the zoning. And that could be tricky. And that may be why you want to go out and have some public forums, that once we got the sign regulations drafted, we may want to go out and meet with some business owners, have some Saturday meetings at a fire station, and just invite people to come look at it and get feedback. Because I can tell you, anytime you do sign regulations, sometimes the wheels fall off. You guys know that. So, but the Supreme Court case is requiring us to change the style of ordinance that we have. And we don't have an option on that. And the city wants us to move in that direction in this amendment process.
How recent is that case?
It's at 2015, I think.
2015, and you might want to. You're the lawyer over there.
There might be some simplification to how we deal with signs because of this case. If memory serves correctly, it's saying that you can't consider the content of the sign and how you regulate it. So if any of your regulation has to do with the text of it, that's improper.
We'll just do a Reader's Digest version here. So what the court case said, and it related to a church, is, the church didn't like how they were being regulated. There was a case, went always to Supreme Court, and what you can't have in your ordinance anymore, specific things that say churches do this, campaign signs are like this, industrial signs are kind of like this, because again, you can't regulate any content, so you have to make your sign ordinance really generic where you say residential signs are this. And that works for whatever ends up on the ground, whether it be a campaign sign, a real estate sign, a personal expression sign, or you say commercial signs are this. But we can't say drive-throughs do this and offices do that. We're going to have to make it real generic to residential, commercial, possibly industrial, maybe agriculture. But we can't say church signs do this and schools do this. I mean, that's specifically what the case is in a simple fashion. So that really changes the ordinance. When you look at our ordinance and flip to the section on highway commercial or look at industrial, we've got sign rules for every zoning district, and we really need to consolidate those into the commercial, industrial, residential, and make it fairly simpler and make it more general. But that really throws all the sign ordinance out and makes it almost a brand new document. And then we can still always address height, bulk, size, brightness, location, setbacks. That's stuff we can do, but we can't regulate anything related to the content, which some cities have done with the size. They've said campaign signs are this big and real estate signs can only be this big and church signs can do this. The Supreme Court case says bulk, size, location, and general standards by type, by zone. Zoning type, yeah. So when we get into that article on signs, that might be a little harder row right there to deal with. And then we may want to go out to the public and spend a little more time before we roll that into the amendment. Anything else, Henry, on that? I mean, I'm simplifying that a lot.
I think simplification is the idea of that case and not distinguishing based on, free speech discrimination, so.
I prefer not to mess with signs.
Let's address all the easy stuff.
Yeah, let's do that. And there's some timely ones. There's some timely ones we need to address. Our Bruce and Henry pointed out some things in our very near future that we need to get in place to just deal with growth of the community.
Well, I think you'd bring as many to us at the next meeting as we can comfortably address, and we'll go from there.
Maybe the first 3 articles, they'd be pretty simple anyhow. Right. Yes, sir.
Are the signs that exist currently grandfathered in, or they have to be revisited?
That's something that we could address in the new sign ordinance.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, I know just driving around town, there's a tremendous variety of different things, and, you can't, I mean, I think it's hard to not look at the whole thing, because you can't just say, just because you've been here a long time, you can keep that sign that's way out of whack with everything else that's going on. I mean,
some communities have put time limits on how non-conforming signs get into compliance. Others just let them stay until they naturally change. The Supreme Court case is interesting because, again, it started with a religious sign.
Yeah.
But use signs, we got language in our ordinance about corporate logos. Use a restaurant, for example, their corporate logo. We talk about how those happen and how frontage signs work, and we're going to have to simplify all that and just go to commercial signs, wall, freestanding, temporary, directional, and just have general standards. But we go down to a lot of different levels on signs in the book, like a lot of communities do. Now there's a model, I guess, Henry, that I've been sent, the Kentucky League of Cities has sent out to. It seems too simple, in my opinion, and doesn't feel unique enough for, I think, what we'd want to address. But there are models out there that have been forwarded to communities on how we would address the Supreme Court case. But I think we need to maybe take one of those models and then jump off from there, maybe. But I'm not sure where we even start on that part of it.
Yeah,
So
I think that's...
we'll bring the easy articles first, which would be 1, 2, 3, maybe 6. And go there, and then the subregs maybe one at a time. And again, there might be a need for a subcommittee, though, for the subregs. I mean, that's going to get to some real technical things. Maybe it's something the technical review committee could take on as a sub-role Because we need to drill down to these plats and site plans and talk about some things, too. So that's all I have on that. Does that work for you guys, or?
Yes. Yes.
Sounds good.
Yes.
Okay.
Any other good for the order?
What's the announcements?
Our new commissioner did indicate he wouldn't mind serving on the technical review if we're okay with assigning him some committee roles. Got a technical background there, and again, the more members, the better there.
So assigned.
Is that okay with you, Mr. Boyd, or?
Yes, sir.
All right.
No, we're good.
Anything else? If not, floor will accept the motion to adjourn. Chair.
Make a motion.
Vince moves we adjourn. Jeff seconds. All in favor? Thank you. We are adjourned.